Oh my God, this thing will not go away. I don't know what to do. I apologize. I'm probably going to be coughing a bunch. I'll mute myself. I guess it doesn't matter. All right. So, are you ready to do it?
Let's go.
All right. What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome to the show. I am super stoked to have you. The Beyond UX Design shop is open. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to pick up some big, beautiful art prints of some of my favorite UX and software related quotes, or pick up some digital downloads and print them off yourself. Pick up your copy of Beyond UX Design, master your craft beyond pixels and prototypes. Get free shipping on all orders over $30 and use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop and get your print on. This week's episode is brought to you by Wix Studio. If you're thinking about redoing your portfolio or kicking off a new website project, listen up. I only have 30 seconds to tell you about Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprise. So here are a few things that you can do from start to finish in 30 seconds or less on Studio. You can adapt your designs for every device with responsive AI. You can jump seamlessly between front end and back end, speed up projects with an AI code assistant, start a design library, reuse full stack apps and UI components across multiple sites. Well, time's up, but the list keeps going. Step into Wix Studio and see for yourself. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/Wix to start creating today. This week's episode is brought to you by Mento Design Academy, where it's not just about learning UX design, it's about discovering your unique path in it. And their approach is different. It's personal. It's tailored to you. They don't just teach, they inspire students to use their passions as a driving force in their learning. And that's something that I've experienced firsthand as a mentor. I've been fortunate enough to guide students who are exploring concepts that they're truly passionate about. It's not just about following a curriculum, it's about shaping that curriculum around what excites each student. And their approach emphasizes not just knowledge, but a deep love for the discipline. And seeing my mentees grow and apply their passions and craft portfolios that are genuinely them, it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my career. So if you're looking for a UX course that's as unique as you are, check out Mento Design Academy. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/Mento. And just for my listeners, use the promo code BeyondUX200 to get $200 off the course. So join Mento and let your passions lead your learning journey. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are a regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That would help me out so much more than you know. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, and Marty for all their support. And if you want to join these fine folks and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you'll get rough transcripts and exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. And you get instant access right now for as little as $5 a month. For more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing here, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then I would love it if you told some friends. So Refactor. If you've been working for engineering teams for a while, you're probably familiar with the term refactor. It's normally associated with engineering, and it's not something that UX designers have to consider all that often. But today, I've got a special guest, Dagna Bieda, who is a software engineer turned career coach. Now, you might be thinking, Jeremy, why did you invite a software engineer onto a UX show? Well, listener, that's a great question. Dagna just released her new book, Brain Refactor, Optimize Your Internal Code to Thrive in Tech and Engineering and Get More Success, Fulfillment, Money, Opportunities, Impact, and Growth. And this book is all about reframing your mindset to fix issues that you might be facing that are causing things like imposter syndrome, burnout, trouble dealing with other people, and promoting your own work. So even though you may not be an engineer, I think you're going to get a lot out of this conversation today. Dagna is an engineer turned coach for engineers and ambitious professionals in tech with 10 plus years of coding experience and coaching since 2019. She's the tough love, been in your shoes kind of coach. Her clients' backgrounds include a spectrum ranging from ICs to CTOs, from small startups to FANG, from 2 to 20 years of experience, and from self-taught devs all the way through career-changing bootcamp grads to college grads and PhDs. She helps her clients reach their potential and exciting career opportunities by refactoring their brains. So Dagna, after all that, finally, welcome to Beyond UX Design. I am so excited to have you on. It is great to see you again. For those who aren't aware, we interviewed you on our old podcast, Retro Time. I think it was actually like 2019. You had just started your coaching practice, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a
accurate?
long time ago, but I'm so stoked to be here again speaking with you, Jeremy, because we always have fun.
That's right. We're missing Derek. Derek is, usually the more fun one. He's the one with the jokes and the songs and all that stuff. But you got me this time, which, we'll make up for it. I'm sure we'll figure it out.
We'll make it work.
So, Dagna, I read your bio and I talked a little bit about your book. Before we get into it, tell us a little bit about you and how did you come to this idea of refactoring your brain? I'm actually really interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, so it's going to start actually in 2019, probably shortly before we had recorded our episode that you just mentioned. In 2019, sometime in September, can't remember exactly what day, but it was this beautiful fall day. I get into the office and I have a one-on-one with my manager. And, I'm the kind of a person that really values being professional in a professional setting. And in that one-on-one, we're having a conversation, what's going on, updates, whatever. All of a sudden, I burst out crying for seemingly no reason. And I think about myself being stupidly ridiculous. But the reality is, at that point in time, I found myself being burned out, facing complicated grief that I haven't processed from moving abroad, from immigrating from Poland to the United States, and experiencing postpartum depression mixed in with all of that. So it was a really difficult period in my time. And that crying in a one-on-one with my manager, which I still can't believe even happened, that was a wake-up call. As a result, I ended up reaching out to a third-party specialist, a therapist, and just in the course of a couple of months, speaking to someone who got me, who understood the issues, the troubles, the obstacles that I was facing, the things I was going through, my perspective changed and my life has improved as a result. And I realized that it felt like a debugging session,
Yeah.
And I started seeing those similarities between the legacy code that's in your brain and the way that I worked on a day-to-day as a software engineer with any product, with an app, with a computer software. It was like, it almost feels like whatever's in my brain, that legacy code is like a product created by a lifetime of experience. And by going to therapy, I was able to really understand how that programming I had in my mind came to be and how it caused me to experience that unnecessary suffering, And once I put the dots together, I could not unsee it. So I was like, brain works just like code, which is phenomenal because, from a perspective of a software engineer, you can just go into that code and refactor whatever's not working.
Yeah, I love that. We've talked about reframing on the show in the past. I had Kate Pinkett on, and she talked about this idea of reframing, how we approach dealing with other people, our language, and all that stuff. But what I love about this is it's reframing your brain. And what I love about this analogy is, just like you said, like software, it's malleable, it's changeable, it's meant to be changed.
Exactly.
So just like our brains, that trauma that we may have experienced in the past, whatever it is, we can control how we go forward. And I love that idea of refactoring. And obviously today, we're going to talk a little bit about it in terms I think that UX designers can understand. But I love that concept, and it's just such a fascinating thing. So you wrote a book, Brain Refactor. Tell us a little bit about the book before we kick off the conversation. For anybody listening who might be interested in picking it up, I definitely want to make sure people check it out because it's an awesome book. But tell us a little bit about the book and just some concepts, and then we'll kind of kick off the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea first came to me when, believe it or not, I was honeymooning. My husband and I, we were traveling. We were in different places that were very remote without access to Wi-Fi or internet. So there was just a lot of time for our minds to wander as we were seeing those gorgeous landscapes. And I had created mind maps of a book that at that point I thought would be a book about going from a junior to a senior software engineer, because I have progressed in my career very quickly in just 2 years and a little bit while moving across continents, right? Moving from Europe to the States. And so this was my original idea, but we came back from the honeymoon, came back to the regular life grind, going to work, trying to find a house, figure out the mortgage, have a baby. So the idea got kind of shelved. And fast forward, it took me probably 5 years to pick it back up. And at that point, I have been coaching already. And I realized that the same ideas or methodologies that I applied in my career growth were also now validated by my clients, the people that I have worked with, that I have seen their growth. So I could see that the ideas I have been sharing are applicable to people from different backgrounds. It wasn't just me. So I was able to validate that. And 2 years ago, I became really serious about putting my head down, getting the book written, getting it out of my head. I hired a fantastic editor who was also like a book consultant because he helped me out shape it into what it is today. And let me tell you, writing a book for someone whose high school teacher told her, "You suck at writing," felt like mentally climbing Mount Everest at least 3 times. Once for every draft.
That's hard.
It was one of the more difficult things I've done in my life. And I've done a lot of difficult things in my life. So I think that tells you something. But I'm so glad the book is out there because something that I've been always chasing in my career has been impact. And at first, I didn't really know what kind of impact I'm chasing, but now I have a clear idea. And with the book, I plan to touch every individual who works in tech. And I'm starting with just the engineers, but I am going to expand to other professionals in tech as well. And there's 30 million of them.
That's a lot.
And that's really my goal for the book. So whoever's listening, if you want to pick up the book and you like what you read, please share. Please help me get to my goal of reaching the 30 million people worldwide that could potentially benefit.
I love it. Well, we are doing our part today to expand beyond engineers.
Yes. And I love that.
And tap into the UX designers, the few that listen. I don't know, not a whole lot. It's definitely not close to 30 million, but we'll get you a little bit.
All 10 of you, hello.
Yeah, all 10 of you, hello. So tell us a little bit about this idea. You mentioned debugging. Before you refactor, you got to debug, right? You got to figure out what's wrong before you know what to actually fix. So talk to me a little bit about that concept of debugging.
Yes.
When you think about it in terms of your brain, how does one go about debugging their brain?
Yeah, you have to figure out the root cause analysis of what's currently not working. And let's take a quick step back before we go into the debugging. The whole idea of why the way I put things into the book work for my clients, and it worked for me as well in my personal growth journey, is because it depends on this idea of psychological distancing. If you can think of your brain as a product, as a result of your lived experience, something that's different from your essence, from who you are, from who you potentially could become, you could think of it as your soul. I don't know. Whatever word works for you. Essence is the one that I really like. If you can see your brain and how you act, how you think, what you do as separate from who you are in your essence, then it's just like that software app that we were talking about. Just go into the code and fix whatever's not working. And how do you fix what's not working? First of all, you need to open yourself up for feedback before you even get into the bug. You need to be open to the idea that things are not working and that you are the root cause. Something in your internal mental legacy spaghetti code is not working. And that's when you get into debugging. So first step, you have accepted, okay, I did not get a promotion. That's a feedback. And I can use that feedback now to figure out what are the skills that I'm missing or what are the mindset gaps that need to be filled in order for me to get that promotion. And that applies not just to engineers, but to all professionals, right? And in fact, I've seen a few Amazon reviews saying that this book is for anyone with a brain. So
yeah.
even though it talks about, about the brain from the perspective of a software engineer.
Now, you bring up a good point, too, because I said, you got to debug before you can refactor. But before you debug, you have to find a bug, right? There has to be some problem for you to fix. So actually, we probably jumped ahead a step. The first step is probably figuring out that something is wrong.
Yes.
So from your perspective, when you think about this, and this is obviously maybe personal and everyone is completely different, but maybe you could talk generalized. You don't have to give out any specifics about clients and things. But what are some things that you've kind of seen that people struggle with in their careers that make them say, hey, something is wrong. I actually need to start looking at how to fix it. We jumped ahead a little bit, but
there are 2 high-level mistakes that people make in general, and I'm guilty of those myself too. One is trying to DIY it for way too long. You need support and feedback from other people outside of you because you have blind spots. And that's number one, mistake number one, trying to DIY it for too long. And mistake number two is being closed to that feedback. Having moved as an Eastern European to the south of the United States, I'm in North Carolina.
Very different.
When I had to figure out my communication skills, people would tell me, Dagna, you're coming across a little harsh. You are rough around the edges. Or, boy, girl, you sound mean, right? And I was like, you're just too sensitive, And in my mind, I also I got admitted, I attributed it to some people around me having this bias against strong professional women. And in my mind, that was the perfect excuse for me to not upgrade my communication skills, which after I had upgraded them, I can see what is it that I was missing back then. And I can own it now. I didn't have the skills. So it wasn't them, it was me. But it was easier to blame everything and everyone around me rather than do something about it myself. So being open to feedback is really what allowed me to make a change, right? Being open to feedback. That's not being open to feedback is that second mistake.
I love that. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that too, because last episode I had Joseph Mercica on, and we talked all about, we were talking about applying for jobs in different countries and the culture differences. And one of the things, he's from the south of in the Mediterranean, Malta, and he's applying for jobs in other places. And he got feedback that you're kind of coming off as passive aggressive or aggressive, and you're asking all these really hard questions, and you're just like, whoa, hold on, tiger, a little bit, and it's kind of very similar. And it's funny we mentioned how sort of Eastern Europe and Germany, places like that, have sort of this more direct approach, but when you go to other places, that direct approach is definitely seen as something negative.
Yes.
And what's interesting is you can, just like you said, insist that people adapt to you, right? Or you can reframe it and figure out how you can adapt to the environment that you are now in.
And I love that you pointed it out, but what's easier?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's very hard to do
Expecting other people to change or forcing other people to change. You're setting yourself up for failure if you're expecting that to happen. But you have control over yourself, over your mindset, over your skills. You can change that.
So when we think about debugging then, right? So we've established that there's a change that needs to happen. When we think about debugging, do you have a process, a method for going about this? Is there a framework, or is it sort of just different for everybody? Can you talk a little bit about that without giving too many spoilers away from the book? Obviously, go read the book. But can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I would love to read a fragment of the book if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, please do. Go ahead.
Okay. So the very first step, is related to debugging, which is identifying the root causes, right? So this is you diving into that mental legacy code, trying to figure out who or what experience put that particular code into the code base that's sitting between your ears.
Who did the mental pull request?
Right, exactly. Who put it there? Why is it there? Why am I acting this particular way? Because, and let's step a little bit back for a second, everything you do or don't do follows that internal mental legacy code. Even the stupid things that you do, they are following along with that code. So whatever you've done, however you're acting, it's you need to debug the code in order to understand why are you keep doing those things. Okay, so here's the piece from the book. In the first step, you got to dive into the mental code and find out what is really going on. Not just the surface level behaviors. You got to dig deeper and examine any coupled mental files where your thoughts and beliefs are stored. Investigating various dependencies and how they are all linked together is key. It creates awareness of what mental code is currently executed that keeps the buggy or inefficient behaviors running. Begin by asking yourself a series of questions to explore your beliefs, your thoughts, and feelings, which results in patterns of behavior associated with specific situations or triggers. Number 1, question. What are the specific patterns of behavior I'm trying to understand and refactor? And then question number 2, are there specific situations or trigger for these behaviors? Are these internal or external? What are they? So this is where you set a scene for what it is that you're trying to analyze, right?
As a non-engineer, could I go back and sort of reframe this a little bit? And you tell me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely. Yes. Please translate it.
All right. So what I'm hearing, you mentioned dependencies, right? So for those who aren't aware, in software engineering, you've got code that you've written, but there might be something else that has to happen before that function can fire, right? So it's called a dependency. I might need a third-party library, or I might need something else and for my code to run. So in this case, if we're talking just like mentally, just, generically speaking, there are things that are happening in my head, and there are other things that might set me off, that might trigger me, that might get me upset, that might make me happy, that might make me change how I approach things, right? Is that sort of kind of what I'm hearing when I think about depends? Does that make sense?
Yes. Point, you got it spot on.
I love that. Yeah. And so when I think about this is what I love about this idea, internal or external, right? Are there things that am I putting myself in a situation that triggers me? Is there something else that might cause it? And then there's an external thing, then internally, how do I process that? Am I processing that? Or is there some baggage that I'm bringing into this from previous relationships? Maybe I had a really bad product manager and I had a really fraught relationship with that person. So now I assume every product manager is bad. Or is this current product manager actually doing things that I don't like, or my stakeholder or whatever? And so how you manage that relationship might be very different if you're bringing that past trauma to the relationship, or if they're doing something that's causing it. So I don't know. Am I kind of explaining that correctly?
Phenomenal example. I love it. Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Right on. Do you want to expand on that at all? I'm just curious. Anything else to add to that?
Dive a little bit deeper into the difference between the internal and external, because I feel like that's really valuable. The internal are anything that is like a belief or a thought or a feeling that comes up. And you want to analyze it on this beautiful, simple matrix that analyzes the internal and the external. And then you want to understand what is pushing you away from what you want versus the things that are pushing you towards what you want.
Push and pull. Okay. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. So internal, in a way, would be the beliefs, thoughts, feelings that come up that are basically pushing you away from what it is that you want, right? So let's say you want to appear confident and you want to feel assertive in that meeting with that product manager that seems to annoy you, right? But you notice that every time before the meeting, internally, there's this nagging thought that comes up that they don't think I am good enough. And because of that thought, you kind of spiral and you can see it affecting your behavior. So that would be an internal thought or belief that is pushing you away from what you want, from appearing confident in that meeting. Now, we also have the external, right? External are basically behaviors, how we show up, how we act, how we respond and react. And there could be behaviors that are coming up that are pushing you away from what you want. And there could be behaviors or responses that are pulling you toward what you want, right? So obviously, it's really hard to maybe make it up on the spot. And a lot of the time, we need to train ourselves to be aware of what is being executed, what is happening, what kind of behavior is coming up. Because whenever we're aware, whenever we're mindful about what's going on, we get to interrupt it. We get to stop that, and we get to choose a different action or a different set of thought patterns to follow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to highlight too, something that I feel like personally I've had to deal with this in the past. But going back to what you said earlier about getting a third party opinion or perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of times those behaviors that you're talking about, from your perspective, they're perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with them.
Yes,
and I think that's where a lot of people struggle, like sort of having this, going back and having somebody else, whether it's a colleague, could be a manager if you feel comfortable with your supervisor having these things, or, feedback sessions from somebody else who deals with that on a regular basis or works with you all the time. It could, maybe even it's like in your case, a therapist or somebody who came in and helped you out. But I think it's just worth calling out that knowing that those things are or are not acceptable or beneficial behaviors or whatever it is. I think I just want to call that out because I think so many of us just assume that what we do and say is perfectly acceptable and normal behavior. I mean, normal might be the wrong word, but perfectly acceptable behavior. And it takes somebody outside to say, whoa, hold on. How do you expect this to work out in your favor here? What you're doing and saying and thinking is not helping. So I don't know. I think that's just worth pointing out.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm curious, just like thinking about this if you're at work, what would be some ways that you might go about getting feedback from colleagues to understand if what you're doing or saying, thinking is helping or hurting you? Is there better than other maybe ways or advice that you can give for people to get feedback from colleagues? Because often we feel very uncomfortable doing that. And I'm curious how you might go about doing that.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. Phenomenal question. So number one, feedback, we usually think about it as words directed towards us from other people, but it's not just words, right? It's getting or not getting that promotion. That's feedback. It's waking up every day feeling a grudge and feeling like, oh, I hate my job. That's feedback. Or feeling like what you do matters and it fuels your fire. That's feedback. Feedback is any sort of information that is related to what it is that we are doing in the world, how we're showing up. Anything could provide feedback, not just words. But in terms of words from our coworkers or managers or people that we work with, one thing you have to recognize is that people will likely not give you honest feedback right away just because we are conditioned to avoid conflict, right? And providing feedback is like a match that could potentially explode a dynamite and just blow your relationship up.
Especially when it's negative.
When it's difficult to hear for the other person, right? So a way that I like to recommend my clients they ask for feedback is to first make sure that you ensure psychological safety of the person that you're asking for feedback. So you could say something like, hey, I'm working on my communication skills, and I was wondering, how do you think I did in this meeting that we just went to? Like, do you think there's something I could have done better? Right? So you're making it about yourself. You're telling them, hey, I am open to receive this feedback. You could also add, hey, I highly appreciate your input because I think you're a phenomenal communicator, right? So you add a little bit compliment there. You tell them that you see them in a good light. So they're like, oh, okay. So if I give you some direction, this is not going to blow up in my face. All right, I'm more likely to do it now, right? Or in my case, I've heard about my bad communication skills from my coworkers, from my manager, from my husband, from some other family members, and I ignored it completely.
I trusted somebody that that's funny. I could easily see
It wasn't until my therapist pointed it out that I was open to actually changing what wasn't working. Because I came into a session and I explained to my therapist, hey, this is the thing that I'm struggling with. And she was able to logically point it out that I caused the issue because of how I communicated. And I was like, okay, all right.
Now, question. I could absolutely see this because I feel like I would probably do the same thing, not listen to friends, wife, but take my some other I'm just curious from your perspective, though. Why do you think that was? Was it just how they explained it? Do you think it's because they had a master's degree or a PhD or something and you felt better trusting them over someone like your husband? I'm curious, was there a reason why it took that expert, quote unquote, expert opinion to change your mind? Or was it because they were the expert? I'm curious.
That could be part of it, but I feel like this was a person that was removed from my day-to-day dynamics. So there was no biases there, right? There was no relationship bias as in a marriage or a family relationship or a co-working relationship. So, it felt like that person was much more objective than my husband or my coworkers. But the expert label definitely helped out too.
Now, something I think is just I want to go back to that you mentioned is how you ask for feedback. You're absolutely right, and it's funny because when we think about even UX research, this is something we say, users lie, and it isn't because they are trying to, it's not because they're trying to misguide you or send you off in the wrong direction. It's because often Humans don't like conflict, and they will not give you negative feedback because they think it will offend you or think it will hurt your feelings.
Unless they're Eastern European.
Unless they're from Poland. So one of the things that is kind of interesting, and my old company, we used to use Workday for all of our HR stuff, adding your priorities. And they had this feature where you could ask for feedback from colleagues, but your manager could see all of the responses. And so, of course, I would send 5-10 people every single time I did my year-end reviews for feedback. And not once, not a single time did I ever receive critical negative feedback that I did something wrong or could have improved. Not once. And it's not because I was perfect. It's not because I did my job really well. It's because those people, just like you said, were probably very afraid to give feedback or didn't want to hurt my feelings or maybe worse, didn't want my boss to see those things because they didn't want me to get in trouble.
Or they were concerned about potential retribution on your end.
Oh, interesting. Yes. Okay. I hadn't even considered that because that never crossed my mind. But yeah, that's something I'm sure a lot of other people are probably, especially if someone, not that I had any power or anything, but especially if they're seen as like senior or have some authority over something. Absolutely. That's a really great feedback. So I just want to highlight that was a very bad way that I asked for feedback from colleagues. A much better way would have been probably a one-on-one, probably just like maybe an email where they had time to process it, but setting up that safe space, just like you said. I want to throw that out there because I feel like a lot of us do ask for feedback in the wrong way, which is not helpful, right? And so if your goal really is to improve, asking for feedback in the wrong way is not going to help you at all. And I think that's just worth reiterating one more time.
Great point. Yes, great point. And I would add just a tiny little bit on top of that one-on-one is actually the best place, or in an informal setting, like having a walk when you're going towards lunch. Because one, there's no paper trail. And two, it's just creates that personal connection, right? So it's not just the words that you see as feedback, but you can see the whole body language. And the person is more likely to give you an honest feedback in a personal interaction because they can see how you're reacting to it, right? So they're seeing how open and appreciative you are to what it is that they're saying. They're more likely to say more. But if they notice in your body language that you're starting to get defensive, they will pull back, which again plays into that psychological safety because they're not trying to get themselves in trouble, right?
So I want to switch gears a little bit. And in the book, you talk about 4 main obstacles that people generally run into. Yeah. And obviously, everybody's career is different. Everybody's got different personalities, but you've seen over, 4 buckets that people tend to run into. And I love this because this is exactly the theme of the show, beyond UX design, beyond the pixels, beyond the prototypes, beyond the writing code and all the other things that are hard skills. It's things like imposter syndrome, burnout, dealing with other people, which I think a lot of people struggle with. And then interestingly, the last one, self-marketing struggles, which, we talk a lot about how good design should speak for itself, but it doesn't. And so I want to dig into these 4 a little bit. Could you talk a little bit, like high level 4, and then we'll dig into each one more specifically. But tell me a little bit about these 4 and how you kind of came up with these 4 buckets.
I just kept seeing them over and over and over again. Jeremy, it's kind of like I realized that things that people most struggle with are number 1, imposter syndrome, number 2, burnout, especially in tech industry that is so fast paced, and a lot of the time they're crazy deadlines or this creative, innovative solutions, and you just kind of want to jump on board, even though you're sacrificing your sleep and burning yourself out in the result. And then we have the trouble dealing with other people, which was an issue that I had with the communication skills, and then the self-marketing struggles that are very, very common. And a lot of the time, it is because of the mental models that we have in our brain. So with the self-marketing, you just said it. You just pretty much said it. My work speaks for itself. No, it doesn't. It does not translate to your actual contributions. So being capable of, I would say, packaging your skill set and the value that you bring in to your workplace and being able to explain it to various stakeholders that can have, various backgrounds or understanding of how UX design plays into the role of business, being able to explain it in the words that they're capable of receiving and understanding is a skill. And most of us do not have a class on those skills. So we just kind of learn haphazardly, or we don't learn at all and then suffer consequences.
Trial and error over time, we just sort of figured out. And this is, again, goes back to like the whole theme of the show. You know, these are all the things that you don't learn in school. These are things that you should be learning in school, but you know, how to deal with people. I've never even heard of a course in design, software engineering about how to deal with all the people that you're going to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And frankly, our education system, the way we teach boot camp, 6 months it's all very, very focused on the technical hard skills. But when you get into the real world, you struggle because you probably, I mean, it's funny because I'm looking at this list, imposter syndrome. You're struggling probably because you're not seeing the effects that you want. You're not seeing the outcomes that you want. You're probably maybe very good at whatever, but then you can't convince people of things. You can't influence your team. People aren't picking your designs. They're not approving your code, whatever. Your pull requests are getting rejected, whatever it is. And so you start to get imposter syndrome, which you start to work harder, and then you get burnt out. And all of it probably stems from dealing with other people and the lack of your ability to market yourself. And, It's funny because when I think about that last one, self-marketing, like people hate the idea of marketing. It's like dirty. We talk about personal brand and people hate the idea of branding, personal branding.
They're like, ugh.
But what I love, and this is something I'm curious if you ever considered this, especially at work, I like to reframe that as social capital because it's how your team perceives you. But everyone has social capital, right? It's like we can give social capital to others by promoting their work, by advocating for them in meetings. We can be their allies, their advocates, and then others can do the same for us. And as we do that, our social capital kind of grows. But then the social capital of our team grows, especially in large organizations where, like UX, for instance, UX is often not seen as the same level as something like product management, right? And so product managers tend to have more control and power, and UX has very little. But if you can figure out how to influence your team and build the social capital of the UX team as a whole, right? You're marketing, you have a brand, your UX team has a brand, but you're not using those dirty words. And so anyway, I don't know. I just kind of I've been using that idea of social capital a lot because, I don't know, I tell people this all the time. And when I have mentor sessions, coaching sessions, people feel dirty marketing themselves. They feel dirty selling themselves. They feel like icky, cringy,
Yeah, that's common. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I don't know. That's just something I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that's kind of something I like to kind of reframe that a little bit.
Yeah, I like that term. I haven't heard of it before, but one thing I'm noticing is that in order for you to develop your social capital, number one, you need to understand and have an awareness of how you fit in with all these other people around you that together make up a business. And a lot of the time, people just don't have the awareness or the curiosity or the interest in even exploring how they fit into it.
Yes.
And so in the chapter dealing with other people, what I dive into is this idea of being on a spectrum from a lone wolf on one hand to a master collaborator on the other. And master collaborators would be phenomenal at taking advantage and building their social capital. But lone wolves would be like, I don't need that. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do and that's it. And then get frustrated or upset because they're missing out on opportunities that these master collaborators are being able to access. Another thing I'm noticing is in order to build your social capital, you need the interpersonal skills. If you don't have that skill set, you're not able to really take advantage of that. And even more, I would say that the interpersonal skills are very critical, and we do not get a class on those going through college or boot camp. I do want to point out one thing about boot camps, but before I forget, I also want to mention that whenever you have poor to no soft skills, interpersonal skills, you will probably face the following consequences. Number one, you'll be overlooked or ignored despite having valuable ideas or contributions. Number two, you will feel frustrated due to misunderstandings with your team members because you have this idea, you want to share it, and people just shrug it off. But you can see the potential. You can see how much it would benefit the company or the end user or improve the workflow and make everybody's lives easier. But because you're not able to articulate that and sell people on that idea, they're not going to back you up.
Yep.
The third consequence is being passed over for promotion by someone who's seemingly less competent, which, I've been there
hurts.
and that hurts. That really, really hurts, right? But you did mention bootcamp grads, and I kind of want to circle back to it because I absolutely love working with bootcamp grads. Because one thing that I notice is that whenever you're going through college, through a 4-year degree, 5-year degree, whatever it might be, you are basically brainwashed to think a certain way. And in terms of engineering curriculums, we tend to be brainwashed to overvalue technical skills and put them on a pedestal. And all the people skills, the soft skills, are like not even present in the curriculum or in the agenda or being dismissed. They're treated like, I don't need that. I just need to be expert in whatever your domain is. But bootcamp grads who come into the field from another background typically have a balance.
Yeah.
Right? They gain the technical skill enough to be dangerous to know what they're doing, but they also have the people skills to leverage their social capital, to build their social capital. And I see them progress in their career way faster than many brilliant engineers who are ignoring the interpersonal skills.
I love that you call that out because I have seen the exact same thing in UX design. And I attribute it to the exact same thing that you are pointing out, that they've worked, especially if they've worked in like a professional environment, they have dealt with people, they've had difficult conversations, even if it's not about UX design, they've had to make decisions, maybe they've led teams, maybe they have, managed people, whatever. All of those things are those soft skills, the training that they've gotten and the soft skills. And then they're applying those new technical skills on top of that. And I've seen the exact same thing. They tend to progress faster. I could name like 3 or 4 people off the top of my head. One specifically I'm thinking of, Matthew McPhail. He's actually a guest in the show, works at Home Depot now. He was a product designer, a physical product designer, doing industrial design for several years, then transitioned into UX. And he's already at a staff level, senior staff, actually. He might even be principal. And he's done that in 3 or 4 years, which that is unheard of for anybody who's just coming out, starting in their career. The reason is not because he's a good UX designer, but it's because he's got all those other skills. And I've seen that time and time again. I love that you point this out. This is so important. And again, this is where the show started. It's funny because I tell people this all the time, but when I started doing Beyond UX design, I used to mentor on ADP lists, and I would get the exact same questions all the time. And very, very often they were, how do I influence my team? How do I work with the stakeholder? How do I do this? How do I do that? All these soft skills that none of them had any clue how to do because they were never taught.
Exactly.
And it's so important. I love that you're calling these out. So we could probably talk about this alone for 45 minutes, but before we go too far down that rabbit hole, tell me a little bit about the 4 obstacles at a high level. I don't want to get too deep into it because I want people to go check out the book, but the 4 obstacles, and maybe if you could talk a little bit about some ways that they could start to improve those things.
So really the easiest would be diving into the book because every obstacle has a case study based on the clients that I've worked with. The burnout is actually my own case study. And you can then see exactly step by step how these individuals have been able to start reprogramming their brains in order to get past that particular obstacle. And it's, it kind of holds your hand through the process. We could spend a whole episode just about like one particular case study.
So check out the book. We'll put the link in the show notes. But is there anything you could speak to at a high level in the last maybe 15 minutes or so?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's pick one. How about we pick one particular? Which one you think is
perfect.
the most valuable for your audience?
Ooh, let's see. I talk about dealing with other people all the time. Let's talk about imposter syndrome, burnout. Let's talk about the self-marketing struggles. I want to hear your perspective there on how people can approach promoting themselves and their work.
Got it. Okay. So one thing that I commonly see is that people end up having a bad mental model of what marketing is. And that model is in opposition to the kind of person you usually want to be, which is honest and in integrity for most of us. And so whenever you are dealing with the self-marketing struggles, you have to figure out what does your mental model have stored in your brain about marketing? Like, do you think marketing and you're like, ugh? If that's the case, you probably have the wrong definition of marketing.
Yes.
Because let's think about it this way. If we were able of redefining that model and equate marketing to educating other people on the value that you bring in integrity and honesty, what you believe to be true about yourself, does that still feel yucky?
I love that you're calling this out, because it's funny when I'm sort of compare this. 'Cause I think it's a little different from personal brand. But when people talk about personal brand and they poo-poo personal brand and they say, it's stupid, don't forget about personal brand, we'll say like, well, what would you do instead? And they say, well, just be yourself, be authentic, talk about the things of value that you bring and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, isn't that exactly personal brand? And so I love that you're calling this out, because that is it. In a nutshell, your work does not speak for itself. All you are doing is showing your value, highlighting your value, and promoting you as the person who can solve those problems. There's nothing icky and yucky about that,
One other way to think about it too is if you understand that you are the center of your own universe, and that's true for everybody else, which means nobody really pays attention to you as much as you think they do, right? Because they are the center of their own universe.
There's a cognitive bias. What is the name of it? I actually reviewed this one a couple of weeks back in my cognition catalog. But there is a bias that we tend to think everyone is paying attention to us when in reality they're not.
No, they're paying attention to themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And just acknowledging that can be a tremendous help. The second thing is, notice that something that trips up people that I work with is that they need to repeat themselves, right? And whenever you're learning something, it's normal for you to have to repeat that material, because even if you retain 100% of the information right after you read, let's say, one page of my book, after a week, you will likely remember just 50%. The number is made up, but the idea here is that you don't store every information that you came across. So if I am telling you, Jeremy, a super phenomenal idea about improving our design process, you're most likely, if I have excellent skills, going to remember it right after a meeting. But a week later, you've had 100 million other things to pay attention to. And what I said in that meeting probably faded away from your memory. So if you're promoting yourself, you need to keep on repeating the same thing over and over again for it to sink in other people's heads, because they're not going to remember and pay attention as much. And then the second thing, I feel like a lot of the time we don't take enough responsibility for our own careers. And we think that, it's my manager who's supposed to promote me. No. They are caring about their own career growth. And if you want to grow in your career, that's your responsibility. You have to take ownership over that and take steps that will help you get where you're trying to go. And self-marketing is one of those steps. Another part of it too is, whenever you're self-marketing yourself, but you don't have those interpersonal skills, what you think you might be doing marketing might not actually be what it is that you're doing, because you don't have those interpersonal skills. So we keep on talking about lack of interpersonal skills, and whatever you're trying to improve and fix in your career, that's where you start, no matter what your problem is. Because we always keep coming back to that, right?
Starting with interpersonal skills, I love that you call that out, because for me, that is like the key to everything. If you can crack that nut, like those people are going to help with, all the feedback, like you said, they're going to give you advice, they're going to promote you. Right. And when I say not promote like your boss, but promote your work, like advocate for your work in other meetings and all that stuff, to me, that improves things like imposter syndrome. They can advocate for you if you're working too hard. Maybe, that'll kind of help it burn out. And I feel like for me, I don't know, that one, just like you said, is the key to kind of like everything. If you can master that, you're going to be good.
Yeah. The last very thing is that there are 3 potential reasons why you might be getting recognized, even if you are trying to market yourself. So I just want to call these 3 out. And again, it kind of comes back to either your communication style or attitude issues, right? So having that awareness, where are you at in that lone wolf to master collaborator spectrum, and what it is that is missing can be extremely helpful. The second potential reason why you might be getting not recognized, even if you're marketing yourself, would be lack of impactful work. And I see it for engineers all the time when we obsess over some technical improvement that in the big scheme of things just doesn't matter and nobody cares and has zero impact on the business. And then the third could be that you're actively hiding by not engaging with other people.
Interesting. Okay. So, it's interesting because that one, the previous one that you just mentioned, that is something I see designers doing all the time. They'll go and they'll obsess over components. They'll obsess over the design system and making sure it's perfect and pixel perfection and all this stuff. Well, sometimes that is important. And sometimes it is a complete, absolute waste of time. And
Yes.
I've worked with engineers who have gone and like spent the weekend refactoring something and like the outcome was essentially the same. And it's like, why did you do that?
Yeah.
You just worked all weekend for essentially like peanuts.
Burning yourself out, right?
Burning yourself out, exactly. And then the last thing you just mentioned, this is sort of the stereotype of the engineer, just sort of like, leave me alone. I want to go work in my corner. I want the lights off, and like I got my 2 liter of Mountain Dew, and I'm just like hanging out and doing my own work. Leave me alone. I do actually see a lot of designers doing something similar where they'll just sort of go off and like, oh, this is my thing. I'm going to go and blah, blah, blah. And I do, that is something I've seen quite a bit from a lot of people. Even like I've seen product managers do that too. They'll go off and then come back with like, oh, this document I made, blah, blah, blah. That's such a huge one. And I think a lot of us going back to that original thing that we talked about, getting an outside perspective, like you might see nothing wrong with that. You might think, oh, this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. And so you're doing that and doing that and doing that. And it's affecting your career, but you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And then someone,
exactly.
like you said, gets promoted. Oh, they're not due. Look at all this cool stuff I did. Look at all this amazing work and all the prototypes and all the lines of code, blah, blah, blah. Why would you promote that person over me? But it goes back to, all of the things that you said anyway. So totally all related. So I love that. So Dagna, before we get out of here, I got some questions that I like to ask all my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. But before we do that, is there anything else that we didn't cover that you feel is important for us to touch on before we get into those questions?
Yes. Okay. If this episode was running in the background and you paid zero or no attention until this very point, I just want you to remember one thing and one thing only. Your brain is at the center of everything you do. So when you improve your brain and refactor it, for example, then everything else improves too.
Yes.
So that's really the one takeaway that I would love for the listeners to keep with them.
Absolutely. And I just want to go back to the very first thing we talked about, this idea that comparing your brain to software that can be upgraded, that can be changed, that can be modified and improved, I think is such an important thing to think about, because otherwise, like, it seems like it's very defeatist and it's kind of depressing if you think about the alternative, which is like, I'm stuck this way. I'll never change. I'll never fix myself. I kind of like that mentality is scary to me. And it's like, I don't know. I just love the idea of being open to this. And it's sort of like I don't know, it's inspiring and it makes you want to change. If you can change, why aren't you changing? So anyway, I just love that. I love the whole concept of the brain refactor and comparing yourself to software and hardware and stuff.
Awesome. And I love so much that you had me here today and that we had the opportunity to talk about it and translate it in a way that's relevant to your audience, to designers, right?
Well, it's funny, back in Retro Time, years ago, we had Tom Griever, author of Articulating Design Decisions, who was a designer, UX designer, and we had him on the software show talking about that because I feel like his book is perfectly applicable to like any career. He just happens to be a designer. And I feel the same way about your book. It's applicable to any career. You just happen to be a software engineer. So I think it's worth sharing, and I'm super excited to have you on. All right, so Dagna, I've got a few questions I like to ask all my guests. The first thing that comes to your mind, you don't have to think too hard about it. First up, okay. I normally ask non-design related stuff, but since you're an engineer, everything you answer would be non-design related. So I'm going to ask you in terms of non-software. So what is your favorite non-software related book?
It's Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, which goes so much more into detail in how the mechanics of what my book talks about, but he talks about it from the perspective of biology, physiology, and physics. And I just love the kind of detail that he brings based on all the science that, is highlighted in his book. Love the book.
Love that. Yeah. So it sounds, when you first said that title, I was like, oh, that sounds a lot like it's on point with what we're talking about today. So if you check out Dagna's book, grab that book too. It sounds like a good companion book.
Yes, I have it in the notes and references. So.
Oh, nice. Okay. Right on.
Uh-huh.
All right. Easy to find. What is your favorite non-software related podcast?
Ooh, I gotta admit it, and I'm sorry, Jeremy, it's not yours.
That's okay.
But it's Mel Robbins. I love Mel Robbins. She is just phenomenal. I love her vulnerability, her style, all the science that she brings to the show, and the practical, actionable advice that she gives to her listeners. So I just love Mel.
I don't take offense. So that's okay.
Thank you.
No one, well, normally I ask non-design related podcasts, but I don't think anyone would answer my show regardless, but that's okay. You know, you're not a designer. Why would you listen to the show? All right. What is your favorite meal? This could be something you cook, your grandma used to cook, something you've eaten at a restaurant.
I love sushi. I just have a thing for sushi, and sushi's my thing. And oh my goodness, sushi, sushi, sushi.
So what part of North Carolina are you in? Are you close to the ocean or are you further inland?
Charlotte is like 4 hours away, so not that bad.
Yeah, so you can get pretty fresh seafood, I would assume.
Mm-hmm. But the best one I ever had was in this fish market next in Tokyo. Like literally, we were there at 6 a.m. and the fish came in at 4, and it was just like melting in your mouth, and it was fabulous and fantastic, and I just can shake that off.
Have you ever had sushi in the United States that was even close to that?
No.
I can imagine. I mean, it would surprise me if you were like, I've been to Tokyo, but the best sushi I ever had was in Charlotte.
Right? Yeah, no.
I totally would love to do that. I've never been to Japan, but that is something I would absolutely try. That's got to be good, fresh fish right off the boat. All right. What is your favorite vacation spot?
Cruise. Just getting on a cruise, mostly because they have a daycare, so I can admit my kids.
I love that. Yeah, that's actually a really great point.
And so they have a lot of fun, and I can actually rest on my vacation. And I don't have to cook. I don't have to clean. There are shows. Oh, I love it.
I love that. So do you do, I guess you can do cruises close to where you are, right? But the Bahamas are relatively close, like the Carolinas.
Oh, we always drive down to Florida. We have some family there. So we just meet up with the family, hop on a cruise, and it's so much fun.
Right on. Yeah. So I used to live in New Orleans, and we had cruises that would leave from New Orleans. So like we didn't have to drive or fly, but we never did go on a cruise from New Orleans. I don't like while we were living there, but never took advantage of that. I don't know. Maybe one day.
Such a missed opportunity. Oh my goodness. I love cruising.
Well, what we might do, go down there, drop the kids off at the grandparents' house, and then go on the cruise by yourself for a week.
Better.
I think Amy's parents are kind of done babysitting. They're sort of over it now at this point. But I don't know. I think we missed the boat.
The daycares are still there, so
I guess we didn't miss the boat because they got a daycare on the the cruise. I love that. All right, what is your favorite design? Actually, this is a stupid question. I was going to ask what's your favorite design tool. It's not Figma, but let's see. I'm going to throw out a new question. I'm going to make one on the spot.
I kind of have an answer for that, though.
Oh, you do? Okay. All right.
I love GIMP and Inkscape. Okay. I don't know if you ever used them.
Yeah, kind of the Photoshop, the like open source Photoshop.
Yeah. And I learned it when I was in high school. And ever since, it had served me beautifully well. And I often use it for making my kids' birthday invites.
Ooh, I love that. That's a good idea. I love that. Did you design the book cover, or did you have somebody design the book cover for you?
I hired a professional. So my skills have a limit, but I did draft it, and it was very similar to what it is today. But what it is today is just like so much better.
Yeah.
Right? I mean.
There it is.
How would you rate it from your design standpoint? Let me like.
Oh, like a 12.
A 12?
Out of a 10. Yeah, out of 10. 12 out of 10.
Oh my goodness, thank you. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, oh, this design person, I don't know their exact title, like just got the essence just perfectly well. And I just love them for that.
Right on. Yeah, I'm actually working on a book right now, Master Your Craft Beyond Pixels and Prototypes. And I'm working on the book cover myself. I'm like, I'm a designer, I could do it. But I realized like, I think I need to get somebody who's not me to design this book cover to get a fresh perspective.
Spots,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yes, exactly. So I got to get some money. I got to figure out how to do that. If you're listening, subscribe to Patreon, help me pay for the book cover. I'll send you a free sticker. So, all right, cool. All right, Dagna, well, this has been amazing having you on. Dziękuję bardzo. Did I say that right? Dziękuję bardzo. Dziękuję bardzo.
There you go.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Proszę bardzo. Awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I can't remember if we ever talked about this because when last time we talked, I had not been to Poland yet, but we had a team in Poland for almost 2 years. And I had some designers out there. I was lead design.
Just let's not curse on the show because that's like the very first thing that people learn in Polish, how to curse and how to swear.
It's funny. So I was going to mention that. I used this app. It was called Memrise, but people could create their own courses. So it was sort of like Duolingo, but people could, and of course they all made like Polish curse words and you could take a course all on like how to say like, screw your mother and all this stuff.
I mean, but there's so many ways you could curse in Polish. I feel like that's much more creative than English.
Yeah.
And so like when I get upset at home, I typically curse in Polish just because it's like, there's more options, I
love it. And your kids could pick it up and not get in trouble at school because no one knows what they're saying.
Exactly.
Oh, that's hilarious. But yeah, so I learned, I was using Duolingo for a while, and I actually have a friend, Aneta Kimiecik, who is from Poland but lives in Norway now. And she's been on the show, and we talk a lot offline. And I always joke about like all the words that I learned. It was like various forms of hello, what's up, and then I'll do it for you, like jak się masz, so słychać. What was the other one? Anyway, I don't know, but then it was like kanapkę, it's like sandwich. It's like the only words that I remember in Polish, but anyway,
yeah,
it's funny. You can't see my microphone is hiding it, but I've got like my Polish dictionary. Oh, here we go. Hold on.
Yeah, I see Polish it dictionary. Right on top of the Hungarian and visiting Budapest.
Yeah. So we had a team in Hungary and Budapest, and we had a team in Poland. So I was trying to learn Hungarian, and then I tried to learn Polish, but I think learning Hungarian fried my brain, and Polish was just too much. Like too many consonants, not enough vowels. I just this language is like is ruining my brain. But
can you roll your R's at least, like or not really?
I can do that. Yeah,
Ooh, there you go. Okay.
I learned Spanish when I was a kid. No, I didn't learn Spanish. I took Spanish class when I was a kid.
Okay.
So the R, I learned how to roll my R's back when I was a kid. I don't know. I barely know any Spanish, but I do know how to. I can do that. So, all right, Dagna, this has been a lot of fun. Before we get out of here, tell everybody where they can find the book, where they can find you, and all that stuff. If you're still doing coaching, give yourself a little plug and let everybody know where they can maybe hire you if they want to have a third party, an objective third party. Give them some advice. Tell us where they can find you.
Absolutely. So for the book, all you have to do is go to Amazon and type in the search bar, Brain Refactor. That's all you have to do in order to find the book. Or you could go to my page, themindfuldev.com. There's a whole book tab that has all the relevant links and information about the book. And if you're trying to figure out how to work with me, I highly recommend either following the information that's on the page or connecting with me in person on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people, having conversations, diving deeper into various topics. So reach out there, let's connect, and let's take it from there.
Right on. And I will include all of those links in the show notes. You can check it out at beyonduxdesign.com. And Dagna, thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. So excited to have you on. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me. I was so stoked about this episode, and it turned out great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right, y'all. That's it for Dagna and me for today. I hope we helped to shed a little bit of light on brain refactoring and how you can treat your brain like software. And remember, software, it's malleable, it's flexible. It's meant to be changed. You aren't stuck the way that you are simply because you are the way that you are. You can change if you want to change, but the first step is figuring out that something needs to change. But I'm curious, have you ever gone through something like this yourself? I know UX designer, refactoring your brain's probably not something you think about all the time, but have you been through a reframing maybe? Maybe you've gone and changed how you work and improved your career. I'd love to hear it. Let me know what you think on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. And if you like what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would love it if you left a 5-star review. That would help me out so much more than you can imagine. And if you know somebody who might find any of this stuff useful, then for the love of God, tell them. That would be fantastic. Don't forget to check out the Beyond UX Design shop. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to pick up some big, beautiful UX theme art prints and digital downloads that you can print yourself. Get free shipping on all orders over $30. And use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to get your print on. Help keep the show independent and ad-free. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/support to find out how. You can join Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free. And you'll get access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. And you can get instant access right now for as little as $5 a month. And if you've been sitting on building your new website, Wix Studio can help get you there faster. Wix Studio is a powerful platform that lets you create and manage websites easily. And with Wix Studio, you can quickly adapt designs for every device, reuse assets, and my favorite, export from Figma and much more. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/Wix to start creating today. And if you're looking for a UX course that's as unique as you are, do yourself a favor and check out Mento Design Academy. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/Mento and use the promo code BeyondUX200 for $200 off the course. Join Mento and let your passions lead your learning journey. Remember to sign up for the newsletter and check out all the past episodes along with all the show notes at beyonduxdesign.com. I hope you keep coming back for more great UX tips from Beyond UX Design. And until next time, remember, you're more than a designer because there's more to UX and design. I'll see you around. Take care, y'all. All right, that's it. We're done. How was that?
I loved it. And you were not coughing as much as we were both fearing.
Oh, I was muting myself the whole time. Yeah, anytime you saw me doing this, I was coughing into the... Oh, God, Jesus Christ.